What's going on? It's a mystery. If it's your first time here and you want to find out new facts that will definitely make you smarter and more well-informed, make sure to subscribe and active the notifications bell so you don't miss anything. This story was told by my grandfather when he was visiting me on New Year's Eve. It was not the first time I visited his house. My parents sent me to this village with raids for every year, but for some reason I've not seen this photo on the shelf of the sideboard before. Photos still. A young grandfather was sitting on a bench near the house with a click in his arms and smiling very broadly. I would even say glowed with happiness. The photo was black and white, but somehow it could magically convey that it was the beginning of summer in the yard. Everyone is blooming around. I even for a moment, instead of the smell of the wood in the stove, felt the freshness of the warmth of summer. I took out a photo of the sergeant and went to the kitchen where my grandfather was using skis. Apparently in plans he had to go for a walk in the woods tomorrow. Grandfather, why haven't I seen this photo before, and whose dog is it in your arms? Grandfather looked at me attentively, then grandfather had not yet had time to say a word at the photo as his eyes I saw tears. I hid this photo from you, exiled his grandfather. I didn't want to tell you this story ahead of time, since you were still small, but as you remember, in this ill-fated year grandmother was gone and I'm worried. I'm old too. I need to tell you a lot from my youth. This will be the story of my life. A story about love, about adventures, and how thanks to all life circumstances now I have you. My grandfather got up silently, poured a strong tea and began his story. I was 20 years old then. I confess honestly, most of all I didn't like working my studies in the forest from severe punishments. I ran into the forest from my parents, from the instruction of my teachers. I walked in the forest with my thoughts. I knew all the old paths around our village, asked for all the tracks, secret deaf lakes and huge fishermen. I got the best rowing place. I knew only in more than once I took wanderers and combers out of the forest. I could easily walk for berries 20 kilometers from home. It didn't scare me, but rather even excited me. A kind of challenge to yourself, and I also felt superior to the forest. I thought that I was managing forests, fields, paths, and this became my mistake overnight. I was too self-confident. Then it was early spring. I went on skis to one distant deaf lake about 30 kilometers from the village and went beyond the light. On skis I quickly got 3 hours to a place like March. It was then spring was just the beginning to make itself felt. The purpose of my trip was fishing as well as fishing. Rather just go away from everyone, but sit on the ice skiing for a walk. It was here that nature explained to me who's in charge and who controls everything here. Going around the lake in search of a better place I did not notice. Apparently the river is small, or its stream flowed, and I did not know about it. I didn't notice it in the summer, but now you'll see ice, and from above the snow fell under the ice all over the lake. Cold water burns boots like bricks and steel water. I had to take them off to get back on the ice. It didn't work out for me right away, but managed, exhausted, lying in the sow from the sun. Pike forces restore. Suddenly it struck me like an electric shock. I'm wet through and through without boots, and it's not summer now with white nights. I didn't have time to come to my senses as it would be dark on the shore dock, and walked. I took off my clothes. Let's run to collect the tail. Fortunately the matches I had in mind were hidden deeply, did not help. The last thing I remember is how dry twigs break from reading. Then I try to just sleep for some reason. I wanted to. Once, 2 twigs break and fall, apparently hypothermia. It got dark all on and I cannot move. Trying to fight sleep, but in vain. I thought that they would not find me until summer. I became sad. On that note I fell asleep. I wake up, the darkness of my arms and legs. I don't feel, but I'm lying with my head on something warm, as if something was moving on the fur behind his back and in the belly. It became scary, worse than when I fell asleep where I was water. This is a great life. Began to try to move his hands. I feel that I can hardly just create some kind of movement. There was no strength at all, but the heat on the stove made me happy, but not frost either. The realization came that I was lying in the hay. Above me is the earth with roots. I began to guess that I had some kind of beast in the den, and next to me the children of this beast were moving. Whoever it was, he brought me here, found in the forest for the dead, and brought him, did not let me die of the cold, and in fact a huge heart did not pass by this beast. A day or 2 passed. I started moving my hands. Legs have not obeyed me until now. I was able to find a way out of the lair with the regiment. I correctly understood that the ground above me and the roots of the lair were under. Another trace of me from the den crawled out of the wolf. They grabbed my back. They just opened my eyes. Apparently they were no more than 3 weeks old. After looking around, I was again unconscious. Apparently the huge amount of oxygen and lack of food did their job. I woke up again in the den. Now it's become much clearer. The she-wolf is in charge of it. It's she who drags me around like her child. I did not know what day I was lying in the den, but it seems the strength left me as much. I didn't last. I haven't eaten for a long time. The she-wolf climbed into the den and laid down beside me. The baby got into our eyes with the milk of his mother. Then it dawned on me, it seemed strange, but it was the only chance for survival. If only the she-wolf allowed herself. I was under the floor and flew to her like a puppy. The she-wolf did not mind. Nature gave me a chance to survive. Nature decided to forgive my mistakes, for my arrogance, for my confidence. So I lay in the den for another week. I was strong with thin legs, but I started to move. But I still could not walk. Then I again made a fateful mistake. But again I had no choice. It had been a long time since my disappearance, and of course my parents were looking for me. I heard the barking of dogs and people, and on the floor outside the lair. Hunting dogs teach or smell me, or a she-wolf. I did not notice how one of the children came to the surface with me. When they saw me, the dogs were delighted and poured me from all sides, but seeing the wolf cubs performing, their hunter instincts worked. One of the dogs grabbed the baby and began to torment. I screamed that there was urine to the whole forest. It was worked, but my cry was immediately followed by the owners of the dogs. They were hunters from a neighboring village. They were just looking for me. I picked up the wolf cubs thrown by the dog. He was wounded. He could no longer be left in the den without help. He clearly would not have survived. The she-wolf remained in the den with the rest of the puppies, and they put me on a sleigh in the village, from there to the regional center. All this time I was holding the wounded wolf cub on my chest, and in a gloomy state I asked help first of all. After all, I owed my life to the mother of this wolf's grandfather, and you told your grandfather that your story will not only be about adventure but also about love. The grandfather grinned. Of course, the Volchenkov granddaughters were in the hospital with me, and I did not stay there without the attention of the nurses. After the story of my adventure, all the girls were head over heels in love with me. Her grandfather laughed again, but I chose only one that offered to raise this wolf cubs together. It was simply impossible to refuse such an offer. By the way, the photo was taken immediately after discharge from the hospital. Probably the happiest day of my life. I survived, I found love, and I will repay the debt. Wolf come out and raised her wolf cubs. Still, I would not laugh at the happiness in that photo. It's how it turned out that everyone connected with the help of wolf cubs in those ancient times. Now you're my grandson, and tomorrow we'll go on these skis to the places where. Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video in social networks. We'll be right back to you as fast as we can.